The autumn rain hammered against the glass walls of the Grand Millennium Hotel in Chicago, turning the city lights into streaks of gold and amber that bled across the night sky. Inside the ballroom, the annual Chicago Arts Foundation Gala was in full swing. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over hundreds of guests in elegant gowns and sharp tuxedos, their laughter mixing with the soft jazz flowing from the orchestra. Stella Morgan stood near the refreshment table, clutching her small black purse like an anchor in a sea of wealth and prestige. She wore a simple navy dress she'd found on sale, her hair pulled back in a neat bun. She knew she didn't belong here, but her boss had insisted she attend a network for their small architecture firm. At 26, Stella had big dreams, but little capital. She wanted to design buildings that changed skylines, buildings that made people stop and stare. But for now, she was stuck designing bathroom renovations for clients who barely remembered her name. This gala was her chance to meet someone important, someone who could give her a real opportunity. She scanned the room, trying to build up the courage to approach anyone at all. The air smelled of expensive perfume and champagne. Everyone seemed to know everyone. Stella felt utterly invisible. Then, the ballroom doors burst open with a force that made several guests turn their heads. A man strode in, and the atmosphere shifted instantly. Conversations paused. Heads turned. Camera phones emerged from purses and pockets. Ethan Westbrook had arrived. Stella recognized him immediately. Everyone in Chicago knew Ethan Westbrook. At 32, he'd built a real estate empire that stretched across 3 continents. His face was a regular feature in business magazines, always with the same cold, unreadable expression. He was known for 3 things: his ruthless business tactics, his massive wealth, and his absolute refusal to engage with the media about his personal life. But tonight he looked different. His black tuxedo was impeccable, but his jaw was tight, his movements sharp and tense. His dark eyes swept across the ballroom with barely controlled frustration. 2 security guards flanked him, and behind them, photographers were trying to push their way inside. Stella had read the headlines that morning. Ethan Westbrook was supposed to announce his engagement tonight to Victoria Chen, daughter of the Chen technology empire. It was the merger everyone had been talking about for months. 2 powerful families, billions of dollars, a partnership that would reshape the business landscape. But clearly, something had gone horribly wrong. Ethan moved through the crowd with purpose, his expression as hard as stone. Photographers shouted questions from the entrance. "Mr. Westbrook, where is Victoria? Is the engagement still happening? Sir, can you comment on the rumors?" Stella watched as Ethan's security team struggled to hold back the growing crowd of media. The gala organizers looked panicked. This was supposed to be an elegant charity event, not a media circus. Then everything happened in a blur. Photographer broke through security, camera flashing rapidly. Others followed, surging into the ballroom like a wave. Ethan turned sharply, looking for an escape route. His eyes darted across the room, searching, calculating. And then his gaze landed on Stella. She stood frozen near the refreshment table, half hidden behind a marble pillar. For one heartbeat, their eyes met across the crowded room. In that moment, Stella saw something in his expression that shocked her. Not arrogance or coldness, but desperation. Raw human desperation. Before she could process what was happening, Ethan was moving toward her. Fast. Purposeful. The crowd parted instinctively before him. Stella's heart hammered in her chest. What was he doing? Why was he coming toward her? "I need your help," he said in a low, urgent voice as he reached her. His eyes held hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Please, just trust me for 30 seconds. What are you?" Stella started, but she never finished the sentence. Ethan's hand cupped the back of her head, fingers threading gently but firmly into her hair. His other arm wrapped around her waist, pulling her close against him. And then, before her mind could catch up with reality, his lips were on hers. The kiss was not gentle. It was deliberate, intense, and completely unexpected. The world around them seemed to explode with camera flashes. The jazz music faded into white noise. Stella's hands instinctively pressed against his chest, feeling the rapid beat of his heart through the fabric of his tuxedo. His lips were warm, surprisingly soft, and the kiss tasted faintly of mint and something darker, like whiskey. Her mind screamed at her to push him away, but her body had frozen in shock. The kiss lasted maybe 10 seconds, but it felt like time had stopped completely. When Ethan finally pulled back, his eyes searched hers with an expression she couldn't read. Gratitude? Regret? Something else entirely? Then reality crashed back in like a tidal wave. The ballroom erupted in chaos. Cameras flashed from every direction, guests gasped and whispered furiously. Stella heard her name being shouted by someone, though she had no idea how they knew it. The photographers were going wild, pushing forward, shouting questions. Who is she? Ethan, is this your new girlfriend? What about Victoria Chen? Miss, what is your name? Stella shoved Ethan away with both hands, her face burning with shock and anger. What did you just do? She demanded, her voice shaking. Ethan stood before her, his expression now showing clear regret. His hands dropped to his sides. I am sorry, he said quietly, though his voice was steady. I needed to change the narrative. Photographers needed a different story. So you kissed a complete stranger? Stella's voice rose with fury. Without asking? Without even knowing my name? Stella Morgan, Ethan said, and her eyes widened in surprise. You work at Harris in architecture? You graduated top of your class from the Institute of Design? You have been trying to get funding for a community center project in the South Side for 8 months. Stella stared at him, her anger momentarily displaced by confusion. How do you know all that? But before Ethan could answer, security finally managed to push the photographers back. The gala organizers were escorting media out of the ballroom. Ethan's own security team surrounded them both, creating a protective barrier. Ethan looked at Stella with an expression that was hard to define, something between apology and calculation. I will fix this, he said. I promise you, I will make this right. You just ruined my life in front of 300 people, Stella said, her hands trembling as she clutched her purse. How exactly are you going to fix that? Ethan pulled a business card from his jacket pocket and pressed it into her hand. Meet me tomorrow, 10 in the morning. The address is on the back. Give me a chance to explain everything. Before Stella could respond, his security team was already moving him toward a side exit. She stood alone in the ballroom, surrounded by staring faces and whispered conversations, holding a business card in her shaking hand. Her phone buzzed in her purse. Then again and again. Notifications flooded in. She pulled it out with dread and saw that she was already trending on social media. Photos of the kiss were everywhere, spreading like wildfire across the internet. By morning, Stella Morgan, unknown architect, would be famous, and her life would never be the same. What do you think she should do? Should she meet him? What could he possibly say to explain this? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and be sure to subscribe for more. Stella woke up to the sound of her phone buzzing relentlessly on her nightstand. Sunlight streamed through the thin curtains of her small studio apartment, and for a brief, beautiful moment, she forgot everything that had happened the night before. Then she reached for her phone, and reality hit her like a freight train. Her screen was flooded with notifications. Text messages from friends she hadn't spoken to in years, emails from reporters requesting interviews, social media mentions in the thousands. Her hands trembled as she opened the first news article. Mystery woman steals billionaire's heart at charity gala? Read the headline. Accompanied by a crystal-clear photo of Ethan Westbrook kissing her. The image had captured everything. His hand in her hair, her surprised expression, the shocked faces of guests in the background. It looked romantic, passionate, like a scene from a movie. But it was a lie. A complete, horrible lie. Stella scrolled through article after article. Ethan Westbrook dumps heiress for an unknown architect. Victoria Chen left heartbroken as Westbrook moves on. Who is Stella Morgan? 5 things you need to know. Her stomach twisted with nausea. It found everything about her. Her college photos, her social media accounts, even an interview she had given to a small design blog 2 years ago. Nothing in her life was private anymore. A knock on her apartment door made her jump. She pulled on a robe and peered through the peephole. A delivery man stood outside holding an enormous bouquet of white roses. Stella opened the door cautiously. Stella Morgan? The man asked cheerfully. She nodded, and he handed her the flowers along with a small envelope. Inside was a handwritten note on expensive cream-colored paper. I am deeply sorry for the chaos I have brought into your life. Please meet me this morning. I have a solution that could help us both. The address is below. Ethan. Stella stared at the note for a long moment. Every rational part of her brain screamed to throw it away, to ignore him, to try to ride out this storm on her own. But another part of her, a smaller but persistent voice, whispered that maybe she should hear what he had to say. After all, her phone had already rung 3 times this morning with calls from her boss, and she was terrified to answer them. The address led Stella to a private office building in downtown Chicago, all glass and steel and modern architecture that she would have admired under different circumstances. A receptionist was expecting her and led her directly to the top floor without asking any questions. The office was enormous, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Ethan stood by the window, hands in his pockets, staring out at the skyline. He turned when she entered, and she was struck again by how different he looked from the cold businessman in magazine photos. His face showed exhaustion, with dark circles under his eyes suggesting he had not slept. "Thank you for coming," he said quietly. "I was not sure you would." Stella set her purse down on the edge of a leather chair but remained standing. "I came because I want you to fix this. My phone has not stopped ringing. Reporters are camped outside my apartment building. My boss has called me 6 times. Ethan nodded slowly. "I know. And I take full responsibility for everything." He gestured to the chair. "Please, sit. Let me explain." Reluctantly, Stella sat down. Ethan moved to sit across from her, maintaining a respectful distance. "The engagement to Victoria Chen was arranged by our families," he began, his voice measured and calm. "Neither of us wanted it, but there was pressure from both sides. Business interests, family expectations, all the usual reasons wealthy families push their children together. That does not explain why you kissed me," Stella said sharply. "No, it does not," Ethan agreed. "Victoria and I had an argument that afternoon. She told me she was in love with someone else and wanted out of the arrangement. I was relieved, actually, but our families were not going to accept it quietly. The gala was supposed to be our engagement announcement." He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture that made him look younger, more vulnerable. "When I arrived and saw the photographers, I knew they were going to create a scandal no matter what I did. If I announced there was no engagement, both families would be humiliated. Victoria would be harassed. The media would turn it into a circus." "So you decided to create a different scandal instead," Stella said, understanding dawning. "By kissing me, yes." Ethan met her eyes directly. "I know it was wrong. I violated your privacy and your boundaries. But in that moment, I saw you standing there, and I thought if I could redirect the story, make it about me moving on rather than about rejection and family drama, it might protect Victoria and give everyone a way out." Stella wanted to stay angry, but she could hear the genuine regret in his voice. Still, understanding his motives did not erase what he had done. "You could have asked," she said quietly. "You are right. Should have." Ethan leaned forward, his expression serious. "Which is why I am asking now. I have a proposal for you, Stella, one that could benefit us both." Ethan stood and walked to his desk, returning with a leather folder, placed it in front of Stella, and sat back down. "I am proposing that we date," he said. "Publicly for the next 2 months. We appear together at events. We let the media see us. We give them the love story they have already decided to write." Stella opened the folder and found herself staring at a contract. Her eyes widened as she skimmed the terms. "In exchange," Ethan continued, "I will fully fund your community center project. $2 million, no strings attached beyond this arrangement. Additionally, my company will hire your firm for the design work on 3 new buildings we are planning in Chicago. That is approximately $8 million in contracts." Stella's hands began to shake. $10 million. Her project, the one she had been fighting for, begging for funding for, could become real. Her small firm would have worked for the next 2 years. Her career would be made. "Why?" she asked, looking up at him. "Why would you do this?" "Because I need time," Ethan said simply. "Time for Victoria to quietly end things with our families. Time for the media frenzy to die down. A time to restructure some business deals that were dependent on the merger. If you and I are dating, it gives everyone a narrative they can accept. In 2 months, we can have a quiet, mutual breakup. No drama, everyone moves on." Stella stared at the contract, her mind racing. It was manipulative. It was a business transaction dressed up as a relationship. It went against every principle she had about honesty and authenticity. But it was also an opportunity that would never come again. What would I have to do? She asked carefully. Attend events with me. Let photographers take our picture, like we enjoy each other's company in public. That is all. Ethan's expression softened slightly. I am not asking you to pretend in private. When it is just us, you can be as angry at me as you want. Despite everything, Stella felt a small smile tug at her lips. There was something oddly honest about that statement. She looked down at the contract again. $2 million for her community center. A chance to help hundreds of kids who needed safe spaces and opportunities. Her name on buildings that would reshape the Chicago skyline. All she had to do was pretend to date a man for 2 months. I need time to think, Stella said finally. Of course, Ethan pulled out his phone. Can I have your number? I will not harass you, I promise. But if you have questions about the contract, or if the media becomes too overwhelming, I want you to be able to reach me. Stella hesitated, then rattled off her number. Ethan typed it in and immediately sent her a text so she would have his. As she stood to leave, Ethan stood as well. Stella, he said, and something in his voice made her pause. I know you have no reason to trust me, but I promise you if you agree to this, I will protect you from the worst of the media attention. I will make sure this helps your career, not destroys it. And when it is over, you will walk away with everything I promised. Stella met his eyes, searching for deception and finding only exhaustion and sincerity. I will give you my answer tomorrow, she said. That night, Stella sat in her tiny apartment, the contract spread out on her coffee table. She read every word 3 times. She made a list of pros and cons. She called her best friend and talked through the decision without revealing all the details. But deep down, she already knew what her answer would be. The next morning, she texted Ethan 3 words. I accept. When do we start? His response came immediately. Tonight. I am picking you up at 7. Wear something nice. Yeah. We have our first date. Stella stared at her phone, her heart pounding with a mixture of anxiety and something else she refused to name. Her life as Ethan Westbrook's fake girlfriend was about to begin. Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more content. See you in the next one. Stella stood in front of her closet, staring at the few dresses hanging there. They all seemed so wrong. She'd agreed to this for practical reasons, she reminded herself. A business deal, that's all. So why were her hands shaking as she pulled out a deep burgundy dress, one she'd bought on a whim and never even worn? At exactly 7, her phone buzzed. Ethan was downstairs. Taking one last look in the mirror, she grabbed her small clutch and headed out. A sleek black car idled at the curb. As she approached, Ethan stepped out. He wore a charcoal gray suit that fit him perfectly. When his eyes met hers, something flickered in his expression. It looked almost like genuine appreciation. You look beautiful, he said. Stella hated how the compliment made her pulse quicken. Thank you, she replied, keeping her voice cool. Where are we going? Dinner at Marcello's. It's one of the most photographed restaurants in the city. By tomorrow morning, everyone will know we're together. The reminder that this was all a show helped Stella get her composure back. She slid into the car, and Ethan followed, keeping a respectful distance. During the drive, Ethan briefed her like they were preparing for a meeting. The media will be outside the restaurant. We need to arrive holding hands. Inside, sit close, but not uncomfortably so. Laugh at my jokes, even if they're terrible.
I'd make eye contact.
Act like you find me interesting. That last part might require some actual acting skill, Stella said dryly. She was surprised when Ethan actually laughed. It was a real, warm sound, totally unexpected. Fair point, he said, a smile still on his face. The restaurant was just as he'd predicted. A line of photographers swarmed the sidewalk, cameras at the ready. As they got out of the car, Ethan took Stella's hand. His palm was warm, his grip steady and reassuring. Camera flashes exploded around them. Reporters shouted questions from every direction. But Ethan kept his eyes on Stella as if she were the only person in the world. He leaned close and whispered in her ear, "Just breathe. I've got you." Those 4 words, spoken so softly only she could hear, did something strange to her heartbeat. Inside, the restaurant was elegant and intimate, with soft lighting and classical music. They were seated at a corner table, private enough, but still visible to other diners. Ethan ordered wine and then, to her surprise, asked about her community center project. At first, she answered carefully, thinking he was just making conversation for the show. But as she started talking about the kids who needed safe spaces, her vision for art programs and mentorships, she realized he was actually listening. He was paying genuine attention. Why architecture? He asked after their meals arrived. What made you choose it? Stella paused, surprised by the personal question. When I was 10, my family lost our home. We moved into a tiny apartment in a rough neighborhood. But there was this old library nearby, a beautiful building with high ceilings and big windows. I spent every afternoon there. It made me feel safe, like I belonged somewhere beautiful, even when everything else was falling apart. She looked up and saw Ethan watching her. His expression was no longer carefully neutral. Something real was in his eyes. I wanted to create spaces like that for other people, she continued softly. Places that make them feel valued, protected, hopeful. That's remarkable, Ethan said, and she could tell he meant it. For a moment, they just looked at each other, and the air between them shifted. This was something neither of them had planned for. Over the next 3 weeks, Stella and Ethan fell into a routine. They went to gallery openings, charity dinners, and business events. The media loved it. Every photo showed them looking like a perfect couple, a modern fairy tale romance. But behind the scenes, something unexpected was happening. Ethan started texting her in the mornings, not about their schedule, but just to ask how she was. He sent her articles about architecture he thought she'd find interesting. When a vicious gossip blogger wrote a cruel piece about Stella's background, Ethan had his legal team shut it down within hours. And Stella found herself actually looking forward to their time together. She discovered that beneath the cold businessman exterior, Ethan had a quiet sense of humor. He remembered small details she mentioned. He was someone who had been shaped by pressure into hiding his real self. One evening, after an exhausting fundraiser, Ethan drove her home, but didn't immediately let her out of the car. He stared straight ahead through the windshield. "Can I tell you something?" he asked. "Of course. I haven't enjoyed spending time with someone this much in years," he said quietly. "This started as a business arrangement, but you've become the best part of my days, Stella." Her breath caught. She turned to look at him, his face lit by the passing streetlights. "Ethan, I know," he said quickly. "I know this has an end date. I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted you to know." He finally turned to face her, and the vulnerability in his eyes broke something open inside her. "You've become the best part of my days too," Stella whispered. The space between them seemed to shrink. Ethan's hand reached up slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, and gently touched her cheek. This time, when he leaned in to kiss her, it was a question, not a demand. Stella closed the distance herself. This kiss was nothing like their first one at the gala. It was soft, tentative, and achingly real. When they finally pulled apart, they were both trembling. "This complicates things," Stella said breathlessly. "I know," Ethan replied, resting his forehead against hers. "I don't care." The next morning, Stella woke up to a text Ethan had sent at 3 a.m. "I can't stop thinking about you. I know this was supposed to be fake, but nothing about how I feel is pretend anymore." Her heart hammered as she read the words over and over. She had been awake all night too, replaying that kiss, finally admitting what she'd been trying to deny for weeks. She was falling in love with Ethan Westbrook. Later that day, they met at a small cafe, far from their usual spots. No cameras, no performance, just them. "The 2 months are almost up," Ethan said, holding a coffee cup he wasn't drinking from. "According to our contract, we're supposed to have a quiet breakup next week." "I know," Stella said softly. "I don't want that." Ethan set down his cup and reached across the table to take her hand. "Stella, I know this started in the worst possible way. I manipulated the situation and pulled you into my chaos. But what I feel for you now is real. The way you challenge me, the way you see the world, the way you make me want to be better. I'm in love with you." Tears pricked at Stella's eyes. "You hurt me at the beginning," she said honestly. "You made a choice for me without asking. That was wrong." "It was," Ethan agreed, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "And I will spend however long it takes making it up to you, if you'll let me." Stella took a shaky breath. "I told myself I was doing this for the money, for my career. And maybe that was true at first. But somewhere along the way, I stopped pretending.
Yeah.
I fell in love with you too, Ethan. The real you, not the one in the magazines. The smile that spread across Ethan's face was like the sun breaking through clouds. He stood, pulling her up with him, and kissed her, right there in the middle of the cafe. A few of the other patrons applauded, making them both laugh against each other's lips. "So what do we do now?" Stella asked. "We tell the truth," Ethan said simply. "No more contracts, no more arrangements, just us, figuring this out together. The media will go crazy," she warned. "Let them," Ethan said, pulling her close. "I'm done living my life for headlines. I want to live it for you." 3 months later, the community center opened on a bright Saturday morning. Children poured through the doors, their eyes wide with wonder at the art studios, the library, the music rooms. Stella stood in the main hall, watching her dream come to life. Ethan wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "You did this," he murmured. "You changed lives today." Stella turned in his arms, looking up at the man who had entered her life in chaos and somehow become her anchor. "We did this," she corrected. "Together." That first kiss had been a lie, a desperate act caught by cameras. But from that broken beginning, something true had grown. A love that was real and honest, built not on perfection, but on choosing each other every single day. As they stood together, watching the children laugh, Stella realized that sometimes the most beautiful things come from the most unexpected places. Sometimes a single wrong moment can change everything. And sometimes the person you were told to avoid becomes the one you can't imagine living without. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more. We'll see you next time.